I'm Billy S, and today my community is ranking all the boss fights from the original Hollow Knight based on difficulty. We ranked each boss on a scale of 1 to 10, worked out the averages, and now I've got the results, which were only possible thanks to the massive support on the Silksong boss difficulty ranking video. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. So, let's jump right in. Every Hollow Knight boss ranked, easiest to hardest, starting with... At number 47, we have the Vengefly King, who scored a total difficulty average of 1.23 out of 10, with 33 votes for easiest boss. First fought when rescuing Zote in Upper Green Path, the Vengefly King only has 2 attacks. It can sweep across the arena, diving at the knight to deal damage, or it can summon baby Vengeflies who can swarm the player. It's a simple case of waiting for the boss to dive, then nail pogoing over the boss to deal damage. It appears again during the Trial of the Warrior in the Colosseum, and is refought in the Pantheons in Godhome, where its ascended variant just adds a second Vengefly. Honestly, the first 5 entries on today's ranking could be listed in any order and it would make sense, they are all that simple. At number 46, we have the massive Moss Charger, who scored a total difficulty average of 1.32 out of 10, with 51 votes for easiest boss. The Moss Charger has 2 attacks, a charge, and a belly flop. While the latter move can prove dangerous in the early game if you're not used to movement in Hollow Knight, the former charge attack can be absolutely abused to beat the Moss Charger in a handful of cycles. Quick Slash here is a game changer, allowing for you to smack the boss so consistently during the charge that it won't ever hit you, and if you pair it with Heavy Blow, the extra knockback means you simply cannot lose this fight in Godhome. Obviously, neither of those charms are available in the early game when you fight this boss in its regular arena, so you need a bit more timing and spatial awareness for that. But it is to the point where people forget this boss exists, and it's not even on a progression path, so some players are gonna miss it during their first Green Path visit. At number 55, we have Gruzmother, who scored a total difficulty average of 1.58 out of 10, with 53 votes for easiest boss and 1 vote for hardest boss. Now, I'm going to be the first person to admit that her ascended difficulty in the Pantheons actually trips me up sometimes. The extra spikes in the arena and the smaller space really makes her more threatening than base game, as in Forgotten Crossroads, she simply roams around her arena listfully, practically begging you to attack her. She'll sometimes attempt to charge you, but you have ample time to react and pogo over her. Her Wild Slam attack is slightly more dangerous early game as you don't have your dash ability, so timing your walk to avoid her as she zigzags from ceiling to floor requires some thought. But a Gruzmother is still only a 1.58. At number 44, we have the False Knight, who scored a total difficulty average of 1.69 out of 10, with 68 votes for easiest boss and 1 vote for hardest boss. Now, I'm not going to champion False Knight's difficulty, he is one of the slowest bosses on the roster, and that is by design, but I'm glad he ranked above the previous 3 entries. He's definitely tougher than a Vengefly King. He spends most of his time jumping around the arena, hanging in the air long enough so that the knight can run underneath him to reposition. His 2 slam attacks have massive wind-ups, with one releasing a white shockwave that crosses the arena, while the other is a simple melee attack aimed at the player. After each stun, he'll use an Enrage attack where he slams the ground around him and you have to avoid barrels falling from the ceiling, before repeating the process with more barrels falling with the False Knight's regular attacks. Coming back to him after Silksong, this boss is moving in slow motion. I feel like Goku after arriving on planet Namek from his training arc, and rematching the poor guy in Godhome when you do have all your movement tools and spells is just a form of bullying. At number 43, we have the Crystal Guardian, who scored a total difficulty average of 2.11 out of 10, with 44 votes for easiest fight and 1 vote for hardest fight. This is a battle where, once you understand the optimal strategy, there's really not much the boss can do to harm you. The Crystal Guardian is a reactive fight. You aren't setting the pace here, he is. Whether he's hopping to reposition himself in the arena, summoning a series of 4 crystal beams that slice vertically down the arena, or targeting you with his laser, all you need to do is stay still, react to any danger as you see it, and lead the boss's shots so he always targets downwards. The challenge here comes from the boss guarding a bench, so some players are liable to mess up from that element of pressure, and if you're not a patient player or a cautious player, you're also likely to taking damage from the Guardian. My best advice is to stay still, react to the boss, and don't panic. Or heal, you do not have time to heal in this fight. At number 42, we have the Soul Warrior, known affectionately as Norman, who scored a total difficulty average of 2.38 out of 10, with 7 votes for easiest fight. He's not exactly a traditional boss in the base game, more of a mini-boss you encounter, but Godhome's DLC upgraded him to boss status, and so must I. He's another fight where you need to react to what the boss is doing, as the Soul Warrior loves a teleport and a projectile. If he teleports above you, you need to dash out of the way to avoid the incoming dive slash. He can do a lunge where he slices across the arena, and can conjure a projectile orb that homes in on the player. You need to avoid its curved trajectory to come out on top. In certain battles, this boss will also be fought with follies spawning in. These flying enemies can overwhelm you, blinding you to the boss's patterns and helping you take a few extra hits. He's not a big threat in the Pantheon, more on the annoying end, but I like his kit overall. At number 41, we have Gorb, who scored a total difficulty average of 2.46 out of 10, with 7 votes for easiest boss. The first of the Warrior Dreams, Gorb definitely has the easiest moveset because he's inherently simple. He'll float around the arena, firing a series of 8 spears that extend outwards from his mask in a ring pattern. All you have to do is position yourself to avoid the spears and attack Gorb in between attacks to take home the win. As you whittle his health down, Gorb will launch alternating spears in succession, but you just have to make minute adjustments to your positioning to avoid them. It's only in his Ascended difficulty in Godhome where he gets somewhat difficult, with there being 3 platforms you have to jump around instead of 1 large arena. But even so, wailing on Gorb and even tanking a hit or 2 will go a long way towards getting you a quick victory. If anything, just to stop his chanting. It's iconic, but it needs to cease. At number 40, we have Elder Who scored a total difficulty average of 2.47 out of 10, with 8 votes for easiest boss. By a mere 0.01, he beats out Gorb, but Elder Who is a laughably easy fight, especially if you've got the Shade Cloak at this point. He teleports around his arena, so you have to follow him as he moves. He'll then use one of 2 attack patterns while summoning giant rings. The first has him summon a row of rings above the arena with safe gaps in the chain. You just have to get to one of those gaps to avoid the attack. Or he'll summon rings that cover the whole ceiling, which begin slamming down one by one from outside to inside. Dodge through them with a well-timed dash, or just use the Shade Cloak to avoid any damage due to its iframes. Honestly, Who gets demolished once Shade Cloak enters the game? It's practically unfair. He doesn't even get a difficulty boost in Ascended mode. At number 39, we have Zote the Mighty, who scored a total difficulty average of 2.72 out of 10, with 62 votes for easiest boss and 8 votes for hardest boss. And I'm so happy some of my viewers understood the assignment here. For those not in the know, Zote is a boss that you can't physically lose to. He can't hurt you and is a complete joke encounter at the end of one of the Colosseum trials. So yeah, him ranking this high on the list is memes. It's meme potential and I love it. Zote fans, you can tell your friends that Zote the Mighty is harder than Elder Who, Gorb, Soul Warrior Norman, Crystal Guardian, False Knight, Gruzmother, Massive Moss Charger, and the goddamn Vengefly King that almost killed him earlier in the game. That is very fucking funny. At number 38, we have Zero, who scored a total difficulty average of 2.85 out of 10, with 4 votes for easiest fight. Another warrior dream, Zero's base game arena is massive, and with that comes a very easy fight to cheese with so much distance to avoid his very simple attack patterns. Zero has 2 nails that float alongside him, and he'll fire them periodically at the player, then he'll retract them shortly after. You've got to get your hits in, avoid the nails as they fire, and then avoid them as they float back over to Zero, rinse and repeat. He gains 2 extra nails midway through the fight, but that only brings the difficulty up a tad, as again, his base game arena is so large and even has elevation that you can very easily get away to heal up. In Godhome, his Ascended variant is the same as Gorb, where the arena has become platform-based, and I'd say this one actually trips me up. He comes early enough in Pantheon 5 to not be a major annoyance, but I do tend to lose a hit or 2 to him while bursting through his health. These warrior dreams are fairly fragile though. At number 37, we have the Dung Defender, who scored a total difficulty average of 2.88 out of 10, with 36 votes for easiest boss and 1 vote for hardest boss. Now, if we're talking about his version in Godhome, I am with you. With all your upgrades, Dung Defender can barely make a scratch on you while you're able to eviscerate his health with ease. But base game Dung Defender, when you're not fully powered up with your kit yet, is not a 2.88 out of 10. I've seen enough people die to this boss over the years to make the case he deserves at least 2 extra points to that rating. His main attack is a dung toss, where he'll launch a ball around the arena that you need to hit away while continuing to handle the boss's moveset. He can crawl around in the muck, bursting out to throw dung balls into the battlefield, and sometimes he'll toss multiple dung balls and then curl up and bounce around himself to overwhelm you. Late into the fight, the Dung Defender buffs himself with faster attack patterns, chaining together his bursts from the ground, and you've just got to position yourself to hit him as he emerges. There are a lot of moving parts here, and while he's ultimately still not an insanely difficult fight or anything, I think a lot of Hollow Knight players are lowballing him because they're so used to his Pantheon battle that they forget he can be a genuine issue for newer players. At number 36, we have Marmu, who scored a total difficulty average of 2.89 out of 10, with 6 votes for easiest boss and 1 vote for hardest boss. Of all the fights on today's list, Marmu's is blissfully simple. She will curl herself up into a ball and fucking launch herself at the knight. You ever play one of those tennis rackets that has a ball tied to it with string as a kid? It's basically that, but in video game boss form. And she can be deceptively speedy depending on the angle she teleports in from to slam you with. Since you can face her late game as she's in the Queen's Garden, you might as well equip the long nail and Mark of Pride so your nail swing is larger, combo that with Quick Slash, and you can juggle her to death, assuming all your swings manage to hit her. But again, her speed can sometimes break through even the best of builds, and obviously you ain't healing here. Either she dies or you die, but it'll be over in 30 seconds. Even more terrifying in Ascended mode, where the arena is much smaller, so you're forced to root yourself to a spot and pray. At number 35, we have Hornet Protector, who scored a total difficulty average of 3.02 out of 10, with 3 votes for easiest boss. This is the first Hornet fight faced in Green Path, and I remember when this was the baseline for a fair yet tough early game boss fight. Silksong has changed those thoughts significantly. She has a lunge where she dashes forwards, needle in hand, an aerial lunge which is the exact same attack, just from midair, and her throw, where she launches her needle from one side of the arena before pulling it back like a harpoon. She can use an AoE thread storm that attacks anything that gets too close, and she combos all these attacks together to try and catch you out. Again, this is a reactive fight. You don't need to play aggressive, just dodge her attacks and you will naturally find her punish windows. You'll slowly improve at the fight, and I think most of us Hollow Knight players can very safely do her hitless now. Her Ascended difficulty doesn't change a thing, but that makes sense when she has a harder variant of her fight later in the game. At number 34, we have Fluke Mom, who scored a total difficulty average of 3.09 out of 10, with 26 votes for easiest boss. Whether you find Fluke Mom to be a simple fight or a tough fight is entirely dependent on when you choose to fight her and what build you bring in. If you're running a build where the babies she spawns don't die in 1 or 2 hits, you are going to struggle because you'll be too busy dealing with her adds to actually do damage to her. But if you do have the damage to kill the babies quickly, this boss can't do a thing to stop you. It's her only attack to force her young upon you. Meanwhile, you can use nail attacks, you can use the Abyss Shriek from below, you can use nail arts, the options are endless. Just don't fight her early. Honestly, I'm shocked that for Pantheon 5, they didn't take away the floor of the arena. God, this fight is too high, she should be like 10 entries lower. At number 33, we have Galleon, who scored a total difficulty average of 3.25 out of 10, with 31 votes for easiest boss and 1 vote for hardest boss. The Warrior Dreams aren't beating the simple allegations, but that's honestly why I like them. They don't have overly complex movesets, though Galleon can provide a few struggle points. He wields a scythe, which he can send after the knight like a deadly Beyblade. It bounces along the floor, and you have to time your dodges so that you get beneath it while it's in the air, taking attacks at Galleon as you go. Midway into the fight, he summons Dream Scythes that float around the arena, one at 70% HP and one at 40% HP, and of course he has contact damage so you can't just run into him. God, I hate contact damage. Ultimately, with the Shade Cloak, you can avoid a lot of his attacks, and Galien tends to stay low to the ground so you can attack without needing to jump up and risk getting hit by the scythes in midair. But the movement can take some getting used to, which explains why he's harder than the other warrior dreams on the list. At number 32, we have the Brooding Morlock, who scored a total difficulty average of 3.4 out of 10, with 2 votes for easiest boss. Now this is a placement that confuses me, because my hot take is that the Brooding Morlock is an extremely tough early game fight that combines some pretty dangerous attacks together. Extremely fast jumps that you can barely avoid with the dash, check. A series of projectiles that, while predictable, have patterns that can catch you out, check. A surprisingly large melee swing whose hitbox can get you when you don't expect it, check. There are a handful of bosses yet to be ranked who I'd say are easier in the long run than Brooding Morlock, but the Godhome variant is neutered by the use of Shade Cloak, which makes dashing a free dodge instead of something you have to properly time. Maybe I just have a soft spot for this guy, or maybe it's because he ended multiple Steel Soul runs for me back in the day, but a 3.4 is just too low. In fact, tangent, you'll see that overall, the ratings given by the voters in this poll are all on the low side. I don't know if people are just comparing to Silksong now that it's available, but I really feel like the Hollow Knight bosses got severely shortchanged in the difficulty department on this poll. I'd personally add like 1 extra point to all the entries to get the actual difficulty for the average player. Let me know what you think down below. At number 31, we have the Oblobbles, who scored a total difficulty average of 3.41 out of 10, with 5 votes for easiest boss and 2 votes for hardest. You'd be forgiven for forgetting about these guys. They're a boss in one of the Colosseum trials, which were then brought back in Godhome. Their only attack is to fly around the arena, spitting out liquid in various patterns across all directions. They're basically a bullet hell enemy, where the main challenge is in getting close without tanking too much damage. And because you always face 2 of them, the amount of projectiles flying around can be extremely overwhelming. Once one of them dies, the surviving Oblobble will go into a frenzy, with everything getting faster as a result, and more projectiles being fired per attack. It's honestly quite obnoxious and requires either careful, cautious play to avoid damage, or for you to go in with the most "I'm going to kill you quickly" build that you have, as the longer this fight lasts, the harder it gets. They've killed me more times than I'll care to admit on camera, so don't ask. At number 30, we have the Enraged Guardian, who scored a total difficulty average of 3.61 out of 10, with 3 votes for easiest boss and 2 votes for hardest boss. The harder variant of the Crystal Guardian, found all the way back in 43rd, there are 2 differences to this refight. The first is that the vertical crystal beams now trigger at slightly different times, as opposed to all at once. The second is that the boss now does double damage with every attack or contact. Basically, the same strategies as the first fight apply here, but taking damage can severely throw you out of your flow because of the double mask penalty. It's a mental game. The first fight is just as simple as it was before, but the extra stress of knowing the damage output is higher is enough to cause simple mistakes here, there, and everywhere. But it's an optional encounter and can be fought at any point in the mid to late game, allowing you to prepare your loadout accordingly. At number 29, we have No Eyes, who scored a total difficulty average of 3.64 out of 10, with 1 vote for easiest boss and 1 vote for hardest boss. No Eyes herself isn't a particularly threatening entity. She floats around her boss room, teleporting after a short while or upon taking some damage. The danger is that her arena is filled with spirits that glide horizontally across the screen in waves. They're a clear reference to the Medusa head enemies from Castlevania, and the movement patterns are seen throughout the Metroidvania genre, so designing a boss around them was honestly really smart, but also really evil, especially with the spiky flooring. I like to perch on a specific platform, only moving when I need to, and allowing myself to wait for No Eyes to warp to ideal spots for me to attack her. You can play aggressively if you feel confident in your movement abilities, but if you don't want to take damage, just play it safe. At number 28, we have the Broken Vessel, who scored a total difficulty average of 3.85 out of 10, and not a single vote for easiest or hardest boss. Found in the Ancient Basin, Broken Vessel hits the same wonderful notes as the Hornet fights, as it puts careful positioning at the forefront alongside a reactive moveset that you have to really learn to master. Whether you're dodging various slashes, either along the ground or through the air, or you're avoiding slams that spit orange goop beneath the floor to arc up at you like a heat-seeking missile, Broken Vessel will put you through its paces. Just don't get too greedy or it'll hit you with its flail, and definitely back off when it uses its enrage attack, spitting blobs in waves across the arena that you have to avoid for a short while. Then towards the end of the fight, you also have to deal with slow respawning infected balloons which aim to trip you up while you're dealing with the main boss. It's not hard in the long run, especially when Lost Kin exists, but I really love the bit of challenge Broken Vessel offers in the early to mid game, and getting to use the Monarch Wings on the Godhome version to make dodging even easier feels like a nice reward for your hard work. At number 27, we have Umu, who scored a total difficulty average of 4.15 out of 10, with 3 votes for easiest boss. Now my question here is simple. Who is voting this as an easy boss, because neither version is a walk in the park? In regular combat, you have to deal with 2 of Umu's different lightning attacks. It'll either follow you with a trail of lightning that you have to keep moving to avoid, or it'll create a series of AoEs around the room that ignite with electricity moments later. Finding your moments to pause and heal can be surprisingly tricky if Umu's too close to you, but luckily you have Quirrell helping you to cut the fiend down. Then you have the Godhome variant, which has you playing a dangerous game of tennis with the Umas that Umu summons. You have to use their explosive cores to destroy the membrane around Umu, allowing you to strike at the boss, and the price for failure is just an incy-wincy 2 masks of damage. That is not 4.15 levels of difficulty. That shit requires surgical precision and should be at least 5.15. At number 26, we have Nosk, who scored a total difficulty average of 4.22 out of 10, with 3 votes for easiest boss and 1 vote for hardest boss. Nosk is an interesting fight because Team Cherry worked on improving it after the 2017 launch. Originally, it only had the charge and the leap attack. This meant you could just hug the corner of the raised platform in the center of the arena, and Nosk literally couldn't hurt you. So during the Hidden Dreams patch, they decided it was time to change things. Nosk gained 2 abilities, an eruption attack where it shoots a series of blobs to the left and right, which had the capability to land right in those safe spots, making them unsafe for the future. And a ceiling crawl attack, where Nosk clambers off screen and begins dropping inflection blobs down from the ceiling in an attempt to snipe you. Both of these attacks make the battle a lot more hectic and make coming here earlier much riskier, but given you get a pale ore for beating Nosk, it's still worth the risk for that sweet nail upgrade. A boss that got harder with time, I really respect what Nosk became. At number 25, we have the God Tamer, who scored a total difficulty average of 4.26 out of 10, but no votes for easiest or hardest boss. I'm actually surprised to see the Tamer ranked this low in the difficulty ranking, because I really thought any fight with multiple enemies would get a higher score, and I think it's a tad insane that some people think the Mantis Lords are tougher than God Tamer, meanwhile I've died to God Tamer more than most players. Putting them at the end of the Colosseum is brutal, with the pressure of redoing that no-flaw segment in the trial putting the fear of God in me. Fitting, I guess. The Beast only has 2 attacks, a roll and an infection spew, while the Tamer only has a leap that she uses to bring her lance down on you. The challenge here is in balancing the pair's moveset. You can try to kill the Tamer first, then focus on the Beast, which is a valid strategy, but if you're able to kill the Beast first, the Tamer will simply forfeit the match and you'll win by default. I found Vengeful Spirit to be a real game changer during this fight if you've got the soul for it, but otherwise you should just be ready to dodge the Beast, whose speed is faster than you'd expect when rolling. I don't know, this is just one of my problem fights. I always mess up against them at least once or twice. At number 24, we have Winged Nosk, who scored a total difficulty average of 4.27 out of 10, with 3 votes for hardest boss. If you put a gun to my head, I think Winged Nosk is the most forgettable fight in this game, except for Massive Moss Charger and the Oblobbles. Found only in the Godhome DLC and overshadowed by literally every other boss introduced in the Pantheons, it just doesn't sell the Hornet Nosk variant we deserved. Nosk has a similar pattern to Vengefly King, swooping from side to side, only this time the boss can summon infected balloons to harass the player. Winged Nosk also shares the infectious attacks that the regular variant has, a Shriek and Shake that sends blobs everywhere, as well as the Downpour from the ceiling, but it sends all globs down at the same time. It's similar to Elder Who's Ring Attack, you just need to stand in a gap to avoid it. Arguably an easier fight than regular Nosk, that happens to be harder because it's in Pantheon 5, and the swoop has a massive hitbox that can catch you if you try to pogo early or late. At number 23, we have the Mantis Lords, who scored a total difficulty average of 4.32 out of 10, with 1 vote for hardest boss. Honestly, I do think the Mantis Lords land in the right area of this list. Early to late 20s feels like the correct spot for them difficulty-wise, because this fight isn't actually as brutal as it seems. The first Mantis teaches you the attacks that you need to learn, a lunge across the arena, a ground slam, and a wind blade boomerang you have to avoid. Then, when the first Mantis goes down, you're dealing with 2 Mantis Lords doing their moves at the same time. It's often a case of reacting to the first Lord that appears, then prepping yourself to punish the second. A lot of pogoing gets you quick damage, and as long as you've got decent movement, you will overcome this fight no problem. It's overwhelming at first, but does such a good job of teaching the player how to win that you end up picking the pieces of the fight up relatively quickly. Plus, we now know what it feels like to have 3 Mantis Lords attacking you at once, courtesy of the Sisters of Battle, which does make this fight look like chump change. At number 22, we have the Collector, who scored a total difficulty average of 4.37 out of 10, with 4 votes for easiest boss. And if we're simply talking base game Collector, I'm with you. He has a hop he can do with a set height that you can dash beneath, he has a melee grab that you can dodge to avoid, and he has his jars. Glass jars that will fall from the ceiling, releasing weak enemies into the arena to harass you. Vengeflies, boulders, and aspid hunters will all try to kill you, but none of them are threatening at the late stage of the game. You might even have a strong enough nail to one-shot them. No, the Collector is ultimately easy. Hug him close, spam your attacks, kill his minions. Then you meet his Ascended variant, where the enemies he spawns are upgraded like sharp boulders, armored squits, and most horrifying of all, primal aspids. I've talked about these in my 7 Hollow Knight enemies you found annoying video, you can take a look at that in the top right corner, and I stand by it. They make the Collector way scarier, especially in the Hall of Gods on Ascended difficulty, but if you can one-shot his creatures, you will come out on top, which is completely possible in Pantheon 5. At number 21, we have the Soul Master, who scored a total difficulty average of 4.77 out of 10, with 1 vote for hardest boss. Now this is a ranking I'm intrigued by. The Soul Master is relatively early game for a fight, yet his difficulty compared to many of the bosses we've covered is quite apparent. He teleports around his arena, so doing damage can be tricky. He surrounds himself with soul orbs constantly, which rotate around him as he moves across the arena. Sometimes he can fire them forwards at you and you have to avoid them. And I don't know about you guys, but I find those rotating orb attacks tricky to dodge. I actually had the same issue with the true final boss of Blasphemous, which had a similar mechanic to it. Something in my brain just doesn't click with them, and it's too early in the game to break out the Shade Cloak, so you have to use your skill. You also have the boss's slam attack, where he appears above you to slam down, Desolate Dive style. What I love though is that he's got a fake out variant just to throw you off. That adds difficulty points just for the audacity. And that final phase in the pit where it's you, him, and a bunch of projectiles flying your way is pure adrenaline. Plus, if you lose the fight, the boss run back in particular is pretty brutal as you have to go through the entirety of Soul Sanctum once again. That tension can definitely ramp up the difficulty. Soul Tyrant might be the harder variant, but Soul Master was a fairly challenging blueprint. At number 20, we have the Hive Knight, who scored a total difficulty average of 4.82 out of 10, with 1 vote for both easiest and hardest boss. The Hive Knight is a tricky foe in Hollow Knight, not only because he's got a fairly decent moveset, but also because his runback is one of the more annoying in the game. Sprinting past those giant bees in the hive that deal double damage on contact has never felt so terrifying. The Hive Knight has a lunge that moves him across the arena, which you can pogo off of. You'll need to be careful though, as the attack speed is fast and his hitbox is large. Then you've got his teleport before he hangs in the air for a second to slice at you. This is an easily avoidable attack and the easiest to punish. He can spit out traps that explode needles in various directions, and suddenly it makes a ton of sense as to where Hornet learned her trapping expertise. And lastly, he can release a swarm of hivelings from his mouth, which will then dive from the ceiling to the floor of the arena, attempting to hit the player. The game goes a little bullet hell in those moments, but if you can overcome it, you can handle the Hive Knight. He's tougher in the base game when you might go after him with less upgrades, since you can access the Hive fairly early, but by the time you reach him in the Pantheons, he is not a threat any longer. At number 19, we have the Hollow Knight, who scored a total difficulty average of 4.94 out of 10, with 1 vote for hardest boss. One of the game's potential final bosses, the regular Hollow Knight has often been likened to Gwyn, Lord of Cinder from Dark Souls, as both fights see their respective players killing off a tragic figure within the lore of the game. A creature who has become a husk of their former selves. Now, you may be wondering, why is a final boss ranked this low in the difficulty scale, not even reaching over the 5.0 barrier? You're really telling me this fight is around the same rating as Silksong's Cogwork Dancers? This is likely because in order to reach the true ending of Hollow Knight, players are forced to fight this boss en route to the Radiance, and as such, what was once a really difficult challenge has become more of a stepping stone for experienced players. The boss has a triple slash that goes quite the distance, a lunge that you can shade cloak or nail pogo to punish, a parry, because remember when parry attacks were rare in Team Cherry games? He can create a series of flames that erupt from the ground, which you need to avoid. He can spit out a series of infection blobs from beneath his cloak that fire in an arc towards the player, and in the final phase, this attack is heightened as the boss goes all in, rising into the air and launching goop in every direction before attempting to crush you like a bouncy ball. All of these attacks feel fantastic to dodge, and I've always found this fight to be extremely fair in regards to the player. You can go all out, because if you're going for the Radiance ending, you'll be healed upon entering the Radiance's arena. So face tank those hits, equip your best charms, and accidentally get Hornet locked in the egg. It'll fuck the lore up completely. At number 18, we have the Traitor Lord, who scored a total difficulty average of 5.02 out of 10, with 1 vote for easiest boss and 4 votes for hardest. Similar to Nosk, the Traitor Lord was a boss that started life out insanely easy. He had a dive attack and a dash attack that both dealt 2 masks of damage, and that was it. You just shade cloaked through his attacks, since the cooldown was just quick enough to chain them, and you still do that to this day. But during the Lifeblood update, he was given 2 new abilities that made his fight way more fun. He can send scythes of orange wind across the arena in wave patterns that you need to dodge through, often used when the player is far away, and he has a ground slam. He generates a large shockwave that coats the entire arena and can only be dodged via the Shade Cloak. Oh, and in the base game, you have to fight some regular Mantis enemies before he spawns, just for extra fun. I much prefer fighting him in Godhome. He's a great mid-Pantheon challenge, and is one of my favourite bosses to no-hit because his moveset aligns perfectly with your skill set. Happy to see him up here. At number 17, we have Paintmaster Shio, who scored a total difficulty average of 5.03 out of 10, with 1 vote for hardest boss. Of the various Nailmaster fights added into Godhome, Shio is definitely the easiest of the group, but he also ends up as one of my favourites because I really love his moveset design. Depending on the colour of paint he uses, he'll perform different attacks that you have to avoid. Yellow means he'll do a lunge with a spear of paint you have to jump over. Magenta means he's using a charged downward slash that sends blobs falling from the ceiling after impact. Red means he's going to jump into the air, sending out blobs of paint at the apex of his jump, and blue means he's just going to hit the ground and spray out some paint in various arcs. Alone, these attacks aren't too difficult to pass, Put it all together, and you can definitely find yourself overwhelmed depending on the patterns the boss goes for. But hey, at least you're not dealing with a gank Nail Master fight, and his large frame means he's not that difficult to hit, looking at you, Sly. And I love the detail of the paint staying on the ground as the fight progresses, as proof of your combat and the fire that went into it. At number 16, we have White Defender, who scored a total difficulty average of 5.06 out of 10, with 2 votes for easiest boss and 5 votes for hardest boss. Given how easy people felt the Dung Defender was, I can't say I'm surprised that White Defender doesn't crack the top 15 with this audience, because the same strategies that work with the Dung Defender also work here. Whenever he dives underground, stay right by him so you can smack him when he emerges, which will also help you avoid the dung balls that fly into the sky. Give him as many smacks as you can while he tosses balls around the arena, and be careful of his shockwave attack that you have to shade cloak through anytime he dives underground. The main difficulty here comes from the boss's overall speed increase, which means it's easier to accidentally take damage. That being said, you can experience a harder difficulty by rematching base game White Defender, as he deals more damage with each rematch for up to 5 attempts. And because he's a dream boss, you're free to use the fragile charms at no risk, because you don't die if you lose to him. That definitely helps to offset the difficulty increase due to the speed and the shockwave attack. At number 15, we have Markov, who scored a total difficulty average of 5.48 out of 10, with 10 votes for hardest boss. The last of the Warrior Dreams, Markov is absolutely infamous in the series for his bullshittery he can perform in his fight. He has 2 dream shields that constantly rotate around him, meaning you can't stay too close, and every once in a while he can cause those shields to expand outwards before retracting them, so you have to manage your spacing. But this is fine, we've all dealt with attacks like this in games before. It's the damn homing nails that are the problem. Nails will spawn around the night in various intervals, getting faster as the boss gets under 50% HP. These nails will then zoom to the last point the knight was at, and you have to avoid them while still trying to hit Markov as best you can. Which again, is not the worst thing in the world, if the nails played fair. But Markov's nails have a really bad habit of spawning off-screen, so there are many moments where you'll be fighting the boss and suddenly you have no idea where the next nail is coming from. It's just not enjoyable to get sniped by a projectile that you literally cannot see, and then combo Markov with being extremely late into Pantheon 5 and his ascended difficulty having a series of platforms instead of a regular arena, and you've just got a boss that is designed to cause frustration upon frustration. I'm honestly shocked he didn't rank higher. At number 14, we have Lost Kin, who scored a total difficulty average of 5.64 out of 10, with 4 votes for hardest boss. The dream version of the Broken Vessel, the Lost Kin is an extremely difficult fight that takes the original moveset and actually strips it back. He no longer has the Enrage move, where the infection orbs are flying upwards in the arena. Instead, he relies solely on his melee attacks from the original fight. The difference is that the boss's speed is drastically increased. You have to have split-second reaction times to avoid some of his slashes and his leaps. The slam attack shoots out 6 infection orbs instead of 4, so you have to position yourself better to dodge them. And worst of all, infection balloons will constantly spawn throughout the fight, including when the boss staggers and you want to heal. You can get messed up by bad RNG from the spawning minions, so your best bet here is to just abandon healing altogether. Use all your soul on attacks and just try and burst the boss down. It's a dream fight, meaning you can't die here, so fragile charms are viable, but that doesn't mean it's easy, especially given how early you can access this fight, as most players will collect the Dream Nail, then go down to the East City of Tears, and then into the Ancient Basin. I love this battle. He's not as tough as some of the other fights upcoming on this list, but he always catches me off guard when I haven't played in a while. Good on you, Lost Kin, but also fuck your minions. At number 13, we have the Sisters of Battle, who scored a total difficulty average of 5.87 out of 10, with 1 vote for easiest boss and 11 votes for hardest boss. My personal favourite fight in the game, the Sisters of Battle take a perfect gank fight and up the ante in the only logical way they could. 2 Mantis Lords? How about 3 Mantis Lords? The fight plays out exactly the same as their regular variant. You've got the dash move, the drop move, and the Wind Scythe boomerang move. But now we have a third sister, forcing you to wait even longer for your opening. The difficulty of this fight depends entirely on your ability to punish each mantis as they attack. For example, I love to nail pogo over them when they dash, and if I have the chance to quickly attack one of them as they dive, I will. You have to play aggressive and go for every possible attack you can get, because the longer this fight lasts, the more likely you are to make mistakes and end up dying. But this fight also only appears in Pantheon 5, so if you've made it this far into the game, you've got the skills to overcome 3 Mantis Lords in quick succession. Some would say this fight is actually quite easy, as it's a fight where you need to be in a sort of flow state to do well, and once you're going through those motions, your muscle memory will serve you to an insane degree. But whether that's the case for you is up to the player entirely. At number 12, we have brothers Oro and Mato, who scored a total difficulty average of 5.88 out of 10, with 2 votes for hardest boss. The bosses of the first Pantheon, Oro and Mato, have finally rekindled their friendship and are here to beat your ass into oblivion. The fight starts with just Oro, who has 3 attacks he can perform, a double slash, which you just need to shade cloak through to avoid, a jump slash, which you can avoid and punish by going underneath the boss to his other side, and his dash slash, a charged attack that coats the whole arena, which you need to jump or Monarch Wing over. Mato will join the fight after the first stagger on Oro, able to use the exact same moveset as his brother, except his charge attack is the Cyclone Slash. He'll spin up into the air and come down with a jump slash, and I find this one pretty tricky to dodge personally. But look, that's fine, because Oro and Mato always appear right before a checkpoint in the Pantheon, meaning you can spend all your soul to just vengeful spirit their asses into oblivion. One of them is almost always more aggressive than the other, so if you can keep baiting their jump slash attacks, you'll be in a good position to win the overall fight. I love the initial challenge this battle brings when you first encounter it, and I think new players will struggle to click with their patterns, but once you've fought them enough times, you can see the punish windows and can afford to be a bit more reckless with your strategies. At number 11, we have Troopmaster Grim, who scored a total difficulty average of 6.02 out of 10, with 1 vote for easiest boss and 2 votes for hardest boss. This is the regular Grim fight, fought midway through the Grim Troop DLC, and is one of the fairest fights in the game. He has 4 attacks he cycles through, and it's up to you to learn each of them, because trust me, you're gonna need it. His Fire Bat attack has him firing 3 bats that you have to dodge, while dashing towards the boss. You can't be too quick though, as Grim can teleport away if you reach him before all 3 bats are fired, and he'll then appear on the other side of the arena and finish the move off by firing another bat at you. He has a dive dash, where he dives from midair and then dashes along the ground in the direction of the knight. He has a dash uppercut, where he launches up into the air and causes fireballs to fall along the arena, and he has cloak spikes, which you have to position yourself to avoid before they strike you. You know this type of move. At 75, 50, and 25% health, he'll perform his Pufferfish attack, where he inflates into the center of the arena and sends out fireballs in various waves that you have to avoid. This is his slowest attack, and if you attack him at the start of the fight when he bows to you, he'll actually start his boss fight off using the Pufferfish move. It's very funny. Overall, it's an in-depth moveset that is both challenging and unique. No other boss in Hollow Knight is like Grim. Well, except his harder variant. We'll get to the nightmare later. At number 10, we have Hornet Sentinel, who scored a total difficulty average of 6.35 out of 10, with 7 votes for hardest boss. This is the second battle against Hornet at Kingdom's Edge, and here she gains a few new abilities. She now has a parry that you'll have to shade cloak through if you accidentally trigger it, and she can now place spike traps along the arena that you need to hit to destroy. This is part of her zoning technique to keep you in whatever place she wants. On top of that, her regular moveset is now faster, so you have to be even more reactive to her attacks. I don't personally think she's harder than some of the fights below this ranking, but I also have to keep in mind that it's possible to find her very early on without the best charms or nail upgrades, and there, she can prove deadly. She fills a similar niche to Lost Kin, except if you lose to her, you're actually dead on a Steel Soul run. At number 9, we have the Great Nail Sage Sly, who scored a total difficulty average of 6.41 out of 10, with 11 votes for hardest boss. Sly definitely has a rough difficulty curve, as his small stature and speedy movement makes him really hard to hit, while he has no problems knocking you out. He He can use all 3 of the nail arts you obtain in-game, the Great Slash, which you have to dodge back from, the Dash Slash, which you have to jump over, and the Cyclone Slash, where you can just climb a wall to avoid it. His combo game is brutal due to his far-reaching swings, and you want to bait out that spinning death nail slam as it's easy to punish after he lands. Do enough damage and he goes into a frenzy for his final part of the fight, where the moment he gets in range, he'll do a spin attack towards you that you need to dash away from, then dash right back to hit him before he starts moving again. Stay in the center of the arena and you can control when he uses this attack and you'll have enough space to get those dodges correct. But especially in Pantheon 5, you cannot get complacent, as you immediately follow this fight with Hornet Sentinel, so you can't just waste your soul willy-nilly on Sly. Once this boss clicks, he's tough but fair, however learning that will take a little while. At number 8, we have the Soul Tyrant, who scored a total difficulty average of 6.44 out of 10, with 2 votes for hardest boss. Of the dream refights from the base game, I actually think the Soul Tyrant is the toughest for me. His main change is that his moveset comes out faster, his shockwaves he creates via his slam are much larger, and he summons more orbs around him at any given time. Fishing for punish opportunities is far more difficult, as you really do need to either wait for the boss to come to you, or risk punishing him when he's gliding across the arena with deadly orbs coming your way. Phase 2 is much the same, just really fast, so your mileage with the Soul Tyrant comes down to how well you dodge the 6 orbs he likes to fire and how quickly you can pivot from the boss's faster moveset and constant teleporting. This guy has ended a few of my Pantheon 5 runs, I don't feel bad admitting that. At number 7, we have the Failed Champion, who scored a total difficulty average of 6.61 out of 10, with 39 votes for hardest boss. Look, I can totally understand why some find the Failed Champion more difficult than the Soul Tyrant, even if I don't feel that way myself. After all, the Failed Champion does double damage with every hit, and his moveset is much faster to compensate for you having all your movement tools. He can snowball you into a loss so damn quickly. You're basically trying to farm the Failed Champion's jump attack, as you can dodge underneath him with the Shade Cloak and turn to get a quick punish. Every attack now causes barrels to drop from the ceiling, and the slam into shockwave attack comes out much faster, so staying close to the boss isn't the best call anymore. Stay a medium distance away so you can jump over the shockwave safely, and so if he jumps, you can dash with time to spare. This fight is rough. You take damage, it throws you off. My footage shows that clearly. But once you click with it, you'll be having successful runs in no time. I do find it insane they put him right before Nightmare King Grim in the Pantheon though, and right after Grey Prince Zote too. What a sandwich. At number 6, we have the Watcher Knights, who scored a total difficulty average of 6.8 out of 10, with 1 vote for easiest boss and 34 votes for hardest boss. Of all the gank fights in this game, I'm with you, the Watcher Knights are a serious difficulty spike if you haven't come with an upgraded nail or decent charms. They have happily ended my Steel Soul runs on multiple occasions, and they do so with aplomb, but they can be somewhat manipulated with their AI if you know what to look for. The Watcher Knights have a double slash, a regular roll attack where they sonic spinball into the wall, and a bouncing roll attack where they attempt to crush the knight. 2 Watcher Knights can be alive at any given time, and you want to keep them separated. If one of them rolls to the other side of the arena, you could choose to follow them, or you can stick with the boss that's closer to you and get some cheeky hits in. It's all about isolating your current victim and doing enough damage to get the kill, then focusing on the other knight while the next one revives. With enough damage, you can burst tank a Watcher Knight down, and as this fight can be fought at any point in the base game, you're free to do a ton of work on your build before facing them. It's when they're close together and comboing slashes and rolls that you'll be taking damage, so keep them separated, divorce them, and you'll come out on top. But for new players, they are overwhelming, even with the chandelier that kills one before you enter the fight. At number 5, we have the Radiants, who scored a total difficulty average of 6.9 out of 10, with 19 votes for hardest boss. The final boss of Hollow Knight, the Radiance deals double damage with every attack and has a series of abilities that are tough to learn. especially as all the attacks are some shade of white and yellow, as is the arena background. It's sometimes really hard to see what's coming because of that. Whether it's a series of beams bursting from her face, or a series of swords bursting from her face, or a series of swords raining from the sky, or a series of swords sliding across the arena, or a beam sliding across the arena, you're bound to have an interesting time. I love that she has the ability to create spikes on your starting platform, forcing you to adapt with the space you have on the fly. Shade cloak management is also so important in this fight, but her speed is definitely manageable. As she shifts through her phases, you have to deal more damage to her while dealing with homing orbs that are firing at you, you have to do a bit of platforming to the left and right of this arena, and at the end of the fight you have a massive vertical climb while she aims at you with her laser. Hit her once in this last phase and the fight is yours. Compared to her Godhome variant, the Radiance is like a little puppy, a 6.9 puppy. At number 4, we have Grey Prince Zote, who scored a total difficulty average of 7.02 out of 10, with 1 vote for easiest boss and 32 votes for hardest boss. This is perhaps my toughest fight in the game, because I truly find the way Grey Prince Zote moves to be so difficult to pass. His flail attack is fine, you can pogo off of him all you want and dodge the shockwave at the end, but then he's got moves where he falls through the floor to land on top of you, and he always predicts which way you're dodging. He can summon little minions to harass you that at least give you some soul, but depending on the Zoteling variant, yeah, they're called Zotelings by the way, you'll need to focus on clearing them before going back to the boss. He also has a fast leap attack that I always end up walking into, and each jump is followed by a series of shockwaves. It's a lot to handle in quick succession, especially if you get hit like 3 or 4 times and you start thinking, oh god, I'm losing health. Grey Prince Zote is the poster boy for, I can't afford to get greedy here, but my greed always costs me the run. At number 3, we have Absolute Radiance, who scored a total difficulty average of 9.06 out of 10, with 2 votes for easiest boss and 87 votes for hardest boss. This is the only fight that I have never beaten in play before. And what I mean by that is, I've never beaten Pantheon 5. I've reached Absrad a couple times, but I could never clinch a win. Instead, I got my victory in the Hall of Gods during practice. As such, this is my personal hardest fight in the game, because it's the Radiance fight I explained earlier, but the boss speed is now on crack and there are actual elements of RNG that can determine if you do the fight hitless or not. With the other 2 fights on this list, I know I can learn their moves and feel like the fight is fair. I don't really feel that way with Absrad. Is it because I've experienced a lot of elitism from people who beat Pantheon 5? Potentially, but I just find it wild that this boss is number 3 when it's literally a crapshoot anytime you reach it. Not to mention the ending is expanded so you have to hit Radiance multiple times after doing the climb, which is also way harder in this version because the boss has aimbot. Every time I think about attempting Pantheon 5, I think about Absrad and those thoughts just go away, but I know some of you feel differently, and that's completely fair. At number 2, we have Pure Vessel, who scored a total difficulty average of 9.08 out of 10, with 84 votes for hardest boss. By just 0.2 points, Pure Vessel beats Absolute Radiance, and I can see the case here. Pure Vessel is the Hollow Knight on steroids, and I really struggle with this fight. His regular combo, you can Shade Cloak through, but you might get caught on the backswing of his last attack, so I prefer to just nail pogo it. He's got a nail arc, where he fires them out in a circular pattern. He can slam the ground to summon nails from the earth to strike you. Later in the fight, he summons soul orbs around the arena that you have to avoid to not take damage. His lunge is surprisingly fast, and he has a parry that can really ruin your run if Shade Cloak hasn't recharged when you trigger it. I still need to get better at his last phase when he launches the shadow tendrils across the arena. It's a great moment to jump, dash, and damage the boss since he can't stop you from doing it, but the adrenaline just gets me every time and I forget how to react. Pure Vessel comes after such a long gauntlet, no matter the variant, that you're just not battling a tough fight, you're battling yourself, and the knowledge that if you fail, you've got to put a lot of work to get back here. That is the difficulty that scares me more than anything. That and the constant double damage, something our top 3 all share. At number 1, we have Nightmare King Grim, who scored a total difficulty average of 9.41 out of 10, with 89 votes for hardest boss. This is very funny to me, because out of the top 3 hardest fights in this game, as voted for by you guys, I actually find Nightmare King Grim the easiest. Maybe I'm just so used to fighting his moveset, I don't know. He sends out 4 fire bats now, which you can just jump dash through the middle to avoid, arguably easier than his regular variant. His dive dash now leaves a trail of fire, so you want to avoid that after image as you go. His uppercut leaves an extra fireball, and his cloak spikes now has him vanish so you can't punish the boss. He gains a new fire pillar attack that can be brutal. He summons 4 fire pillars one after another which appear beneath the player, and you need to lead this attack, then dodge back through it with the shade cloak so you can get a punish on the boss before he teleports. And the pufferfish still exists, with the fireballs moving at a faster speed. All of this leads to a very hectic fight that got people stuck for a very long time when the DLC first came out, and now he's at the end of the Pantheon of Hallownest as well, just to really amp things up. It's funny that I actually love when I fight Nightmare King Grim though. It's like coming home to an old friend. I know that moveset, I can survive that moveset. But fascinatingly for everyone else, it's the hardest fight in the game. Let me know in the comments, what makes Nightmare King Grim tougher than Pure Vessel and Absolute Radiance, because I really want to understand this. And that is the list. Do you guys agree with my community? Let me know down below, and be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. What Metroidvanias do you want to see me cover next? Let me know down below in the comments. I want to give a shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. It's $4.99. You get a shout out in the description at the end of videos as well, and you get access to my Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 Soul Level 1 runs. I really appreciate it. It helps keep the channel alive. Thank you so much. If you guys want to follow me, I have a Blue Sky, I've got a Twitch, I've got a Discord, but you can mostly find me streaming here on YouTube 3 or 4 times a week, so check my community tab for the schedule. Maybe I'm streaming right now. Come say hi. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Adios.